So this is, I tell you, we worry about competitors. We spend a tremendous amount of money worrying about competitors. SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. We build this for every big competitor. What are they good at? What are they weak at? What's our opportunity to go beat them? What's their threat to come to beat us? Okay? So, you know, we actually, for some of the competitors, we build their strategic plan. We have a process where if we're really worried about them, we go off and we put a bunch of people in a room and say, pretend you're Siemens gas turbine business. What do you do? What is your strategic plan? So we put them in the room, and then when they come out, we say, here's what you'd go do. And then we'd say, whoa, if they really did this, this would scare us to death. We're going to do something different, right? So we've got our people trying to play Siemens, trying to play Caterpillar, trying to imagine what they do, what they'll do next, where they'll spend their money, what their strategy is. And we do that for the big guys, the ones we're worried about. Okay, so next one. Okay, so this is one of my other favorites, and this is the Apple stand. How do you think about what you can do with the Apple stand is this. Okay. It's called a spider chart, and on it you plot the universe of the business. Okay? If you forward integrate it out of the business, if you backward integrate it, you plot every geography the business can play in, every channel the business can play in, every partner you can have, every technology you can do. And then you draw where you're positioned. Okay? And that's the core of your business. Right? It turns out that a lot of benefit can be made by optimizing the core of the business. And there's a great book called Profits from the Core. I'll send you the name of the author. It's done by Bain. That talks about how do you define the core of your business and how do you optimize the core. So that's the important part. This gives you, though, the idea of how do you expand out of the core. How do you go and make the business bigger, broader? Okay, that's what this tool's used for. We don't do this for every business every year. Every business has one, but it could be a couple years old because this doesn't change that fast. Huh? All right, can you go to the next one? All right, I had to put this in here because this is the thing that scares me the most at the moment. The world on the digital side is changing at an incredibly fast rate. And I put digital under channels. Okay? Now, we already have a big digital e-commerce business. I think it's around $700, $800 million. So it's a big business already. But this is the place where we are, I think we're incredibly vulnerable, is GE. And I suspect that every industrial company is also vulnerable to people who can come and figure out how to change delivery of a bunch of things. Not just what your product is and what it sells as features and functions. Application support. Okay. Siemens has a community of gas turbine people. There's 5,000 of them. Okay. And they're on every day talking about gas turbines. See, what I'm worried about is that some of those are my customers. And I'm worried that I never get them back. That they never come back to me. That all the thought leadership for gas turbines, for those 5,000 customers, it's all about Siemens. Okay? So I put this in here just because if you're not thinking about how digital can destroy your business, you've got to start. I just hired somebody to go look at this, okay? Because we're so worried about this that we have somebody we just put in place to do digital strategy. And the company's been worried about it for a long time, but I wasn't worried yet, but now I am worried. All right, so next one. All right, so now just two charts to help you think about when you do strategy. Strategies and decisions are hardly ever 100% successful. Okay, and this is an interesting chart in this way. If you do the spider chart and you define the core of the business, right? There's a lot of data that says that if you do something in your core business, you can be very successful. But once you start moving outside of the core, your probability of success drops. And if you move just a little bit out of the core, right, the probability of success drops to around 40%. If you start changing more than one thing at a time, the probability of success plummets. Okay? So if you try to do a new business model, say, in a new geography, your probability of success actually is about 1%. It's very, very small. So, when you think about strategy, you have to plan for what you'll be successful at and what you will not be successful at. What's your probability of actually executing? Okay? And maybe you can't do it the first time. And maybe it drives you to do an acquisition instead of doing it yourself. So this is about helping you think through, is the strategy I'm going to put in place a high probability strategy, or is it a low probability of me being able to get it done? So go to the next one. Here's the other one that we build for, this shows up a lot of different places. And it turns out that if you are the leader in terms of size in a market that is not undergoing innovation, that size gives you huge advantages. Okay? It gives you advantages in cost. It gives you advantages in product breadth. It gives you leverage in the sales force. It just gives you huge advantages. And it actually, industry after industry, this holds true. That if your relative size, you can plot against that profit, and pretty much in an industry, you'll find that the smaller players will make less money. Okay. Now we have a lot of businesses that are here. And so when you execute strategies for those businesses, you can't have a strategy. We have businesses that are here. You can't execute the same strategy. You need to be the barnyard dog. You need to go after the niches. You need to have a different way of going after the market. Because if you make a business that's naturally here and you make it perform up here, normally you're harvesting the business. And in the end, that business fails. And we have some of those. We've done that too. We've learned a lesson. Okay. All right. So go to the next one. All right. So here's a question that often gets asked. At what level do you need strategy? Okay. Do you need it at the corporate level? At the tier 1 unit level? Do you need it at the bottom level? Where do you need strategy? And here's what I would tell you. That if you run the portfolio and every business can do whatever it wants, you don't need a corporate strategy. Okay? But if that's not the case, you need a strategy. Even if it's just about capital allocation. So say in GE, we allocate capital in certain ways. We have a low CapEx strategy. And what I mean by that is we like big businesses where the equipment sales are big, where you need a big investment to enter, but we don't vertically integrate. Okay? Because we have a strategy that says we want less brick and mortar, we don't vertically integrate. So you don't find in energy hardly any businesses that are vertically integrated. So in our wind business, we assemble a wind turbine, but basically everything's built by somebody else. If you go to Vestas, our major competitor, they're totally vertically integrated. Okay? That gives them advantages in some marketplace times. It gives them disadvantages, but it's our strategy. So we know we're not going to be vertically integrated because of our strategy. So the corporate entity has to tell the businesses, don't plan on vertical integration because we're not going to fund it. Right? So that's sort of the idea here. You go to the next one? All right. So now you've got your great big strategy. You think it's really great. You've made a set of assumptions on how the world's going to look on what's going to be, but you know what? This is the problem we all have, looking out into the future. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. So we do two things around trying to manage this uncertainty. Okay? So the first one is, go to the next slide, is contingency analysis. So contingency assessment, so we make our business plan, and it has a set of assumptions in it. And then we take that set of assumptions and we say, well, what if the world is better and what if the world is worse? And we see how the business performs. Okay? And we do this for these are about 3 years. So these plans are 3 years, so we're testing 3 years out. And on the worst side, we have sometimes we do contingency plans. If things go bad, here's what we're going to do. We don't always do that, though. But we think about it. I was at I met Colin Powell for the first time, and he said to me, he's a consultant for businesses now, and he said, my observation is that business plans for the downside, never takes advantage of the upside. And I think he's made me really think a lot about that, because I think it's true. So what happens on the upside is when things go your way, everybody's happy to make the budget, right? You got a budget, you get rewarded on making the budget, everybody makes the budget. Nobody really takes advantage of the upside. And so I think that's one of the things that inside of GE Energy anyway, we think a little bit more about now is if things go well and we can do better than the budget, what's the plan to do better? Okay? Because I think in the general, we just want to make the plan and plan for the downside. So do the next one. Okay, and this is the other thing we do. We do this for the whole business, but it really applies to the long cycle, capital, high MPI development business. So this is scenario planning. In scenario planning, we build 3 different future worlds. 3 worlds. 3 equally probable worlds. But not the most probable, this is important, not the most probable world. When we do the business plan, contingency, it's the most probable world. When we build the future worlds that are equally probable, they are not the most probable. So for instance, we might have a green world, right, where green takes over. People really want to be green. Governments invest in green. We might have a brown world, right? We go into global economic competition and everything's about cost and coal wins, okay? So those are equally probable to happen, okay? And so we build those, and what we do, especially for big CapEx products, is we test those products into different futures. And I think we've gotten pretty good at that, okay? Because I was telling the story last night about making some big bets, billion-dollar bets that were lost. So now we've gotten good at this because we hate losing $1 billion. It's terrible. Okay. Here's my other thought on this in my 1 minute and 23 seconds left. We never get this right. We never make the spread here big enough. I'll give you this example. 4 years ago, we were forecasting natural gas in the U.S. to be between $7 and $15. Today, Henry Hub went under $2 last month. We were forecasting 7 to 15. We had no scenario where it was 2 or 3. 24 months ago, we were saying 5 to 7. Okay. Businesses package inertia. Okay. And it's inevitable that businesses don't have trouble thinking that the world will be substantially different than the one we're in now. Right? So I went to one of the oil companies, actually, that does scenario planning, and I said, did you see $3 gas? And they said, well, we had people who saw it was possible, but we didn't put it in our scenarios because the company doesn't buy it, And that's the same thing in GE Energy, I think, is that the views on the scenarios, we build them, but they're probably not broad enough because we all have inertia. And it's easy to extrapolate today into the future as opposed to thinking of a different future. All right, so my last slide, I think. Oh, my Grow Playbook. Yeah, so this is a Grow Playbook. We spend a week every year with the vice chairman going over every business, every function in every region. Everyone has a growth playbook. And so it's an important thing for GE Energy. Okay. And why don't you just go to the next one because I just ran out of time. Here's the page that we actually make every business prepare. The strategy box, it's like 4 sentences. You only get 4 sentences. If you can't deliver the message in 4 sentences, you probably can't communicate it to the organization. Right? It'd be too complicated. So we do it in 4 sentences. We list our advantages, our vulnerabilities, the top 5 goals. My rule is you can't have a top 5 goal that doesn't support the strategy. Makes sense, right? And then what decisions do we make? What are we yet to do? And then my last slide is just a few thoughts about success. You know, strategy, you can measure the impact of strategy. You can measure it financially in share. You can measure profitability in sales. So it's easy to measure over time. Maybe not in a year, but certainly over time. Good strategy can be hard because the nuance, like the Facebook versus MySpace, the difference is very subtle, but the impact is hugely different. And that's the problem with strategy, is to understand as a team where that nuance is. And then the last thought I would leave you with is what I said before is a strategy might be good, but if you can't execute it, it's not a good strategy for you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.